Hey guys, welcome back to the Analog Horror Iceberg Explained. This is part 2 of an ongoing series tackling this iceberg. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure to go check it out. But I'm sure most of you know the drill by now, so I won't waste any more time with this intro. So just sit back, grab a snack, and relax as we dive back into the Analog Horror Iceberg. EAS scenarios. This stands for Emergency Alert Systems, basically those things that play when
We interrupt this program for a civil threat emergency. At this time, do not answer your door for anyone, even if they appear to be.
Yeah, those. Anyways, this is more of an idea and a subgenre than one series or video, and there's a lot of EAS style analog horror projects on YouTube. There are quite a few notable channels that do a lot of interesting scenarios, such as Alert World, as well as EACES, which is the channel that this entry is linked to on the iceberg. This channel is particularly good in this subgenre because these videos are really in-depth, and really go pretty deep into these scenarios. Great choice. This one is another film. This time though, it's a short film created by Robin Komisar in 2017. And this project is actually kind of hard to find. I mean, there's trailers on YouTube and it looks like it premiered at multiple film festivals, but I couldn't really find the actual film, which sucks because the premise sounds really interesting. Basically, according to the synopsis, the film revolves around a woman who is seemingly stuck inside of a Red Lobster commercial. Sounds interesting, right? And according to some of the reviews and comments I saw, the film was actually really good. So hopefully someday I can find a copy of it. Jack Thatcher, 2003. Another rather short one, this time just a simple 1-minute video. And since it's so short, I'll just play it here.
Oil processing facility disrupts the world's oil production.
Yeah, so pretty interesting concept for a piece of analog horror, with the whole, I guess, fourth wall breaking aspect. But is there anything else to this besides this video made presumably in 2019? Well, not really from what I could find. All I know is that many people were sent this video on Discord, telling them to wake up, like in the video. And I guess it was kind of a mini ARG, although it didn't really go anywhere beyond this. Maple County. Yet another piece of gaming analog horror, but interestingly this time it's actually inspired by the Mandela catalog, created by Alex Kister, which we talked about in part 1. Now besides that, Maple County is just an interesting case overall. On the creator Thorn Baker's website, this page can be found, which gives the download link to the game. And the game itself is shown through an interactive VHS training tape from the Maple County Police Department, in which through a series of tests you learn about a certain threat, creatures similar to the alternates featured in the Mandela catalog, and you actually learn how to identify these creatures, and later on you can even walk around and experience the horrors for yourself. And this game is really well made. I know I say that a lot about most of the stuff we've talked about so far, but this one really is great, even if it is very short. Monument Mythos. Honestly, I'm surprised this one is all the way down here at tier 3, because this series is huge, and I'm sure most analog horror fans already know about it. But for those unfamiliar, Monument Mythos is a series created by Mr. Manticore, and takes place in an alternate timeline in America where James Dean became president. But the big thing about this timeline and story is that the national monuments around America all hold some sort of dark secret, which is a really interesting concept for a horror story, to be honest. Basically, these monuments are actually Lovecraftian beings called TFMDs, or True Forces of Mass Destruction. And some of them, including the Statue of Liberty, are actually used by the US government to get rid of people by feeding them to these TFMDs. There's even an alternate version of the 2021 Suez Canal obstruction. Remember that ship that blocked it for like a week? Well, in this universe, apparently the President of the United States, Hillary Clinton, dropped a nuke which then released the Suez Canal crab creature, with people casually tweeting about it on this timeline's Twitter. Really interesting stuff. And this series has a ton more to it than that in terms of timelines of events and general lore. I mean, Wendigoon did a 3-hour analysis video of this series, which is pretty wild. So if you think this sounds interesting or worth your time investment, check it out. Knock plus 10. So Knock plus 10 is more of an ARG than it is really a standard analog horror series, but it still definitely contains some of those elements. Although this came out before the genre was even popularized, way back in 2015. Now, Knock plus 10 revolves around a few videos which are comprised mostly of codes, as well as other bits and pieces of the story. But what's really going on here? Well, from what I can gather, the story is about an underwater base called Research Station Nocturne that was conducting research about artificial intelligence. However, at some point, the station was flooded, killing the researchers and leaving one of the AIs all alone. Although this AI also assimilates the dead bodies in the research station, taking them on as a part of them. And it seems that this AI is the one sending out these videos as a sort of distress signal, as we can see in the videos that it desperately wants its existence to be ended. SkyCorp home video. Now, surprisingly, this series, I guess, is a good break from the horror, as this channel has mostly satirical analog comedy content, with gems such as these. But all these videos are meant to be from a media corporation called SkyCorp Home Video, but most are just comedic parody skits. They're pretty great though.
Hi there, I'm Paul Perkenstein, and welcome to the wide world of web. Today's segment, online dating. Hello. My, oh my, you are gorgeous. I can't wait to get my dick wet. Cheers.
Super Mario 64 Classified. Now, this is a pretty great video game related analog horror series, especially for fans of Mario 64. This series was created by Greenio, and it focuses on strange occurrences within a certain copy of Mario 64 that is recorded using grainy-looking VHS footage, hence why it's on this iceberg. Anyways, it tackles a lot of the infamous Mario 64 phenomena, such as the Wario apparition, which was done really well here, and I did a whole video discussing Mario 64 myths and conspiracies. Go check it out if you haven't yet, by the way. But yeah, this series is really well done, and it explores a lot more aspects of the game, such as the backwards long jumping glitch, textureless Mario, yellow switch, and even the old beta builds. The Blue Channel. Now, while you might not have known that this was actually a series, I'm guessing quite a few of you have still heard about it, or at least seen this initial video, Blue Channel Thalassin, which I think was one of the first pieces of analog horror I ever watched on YouTube. And it's a really interesting and well-made concept for a piece of analog horror, in that it is about a fictional drug called thalassin, which can cause some, well, let's say interesting emotions you've never heard of. Now, some of these are pretty creepy, but when I first saw this face, I'm not gonna lie, I was dying laughing. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. Still, a great video. And there's actually 2 more videos in this series created by Gooseworks, both which actually came well before the Thalassin video. However, these 2 are really basic in comparison, and mostly just show the Blue Channel logo along with some unsettling music and text. Until... the Chimpy Chippa tapes. This is a 7-part analog horror series created by Spring Talk Pictures, themed around a family restaurant called Chimpy Chippa's, starring an animatronic monkey of the same name. Although what makes this series unique and stand out from the many others like it, is that the animatronics in this series are actually real. Well, okay, not actually real, but they are actual physical puppets, making it easily the most realistic looking animatronics we've seen in analog horror, because they're not just 3D renders or models. Also interestingly, in this series we are watching through the perspective of someone else viewing the tapes on their computer, and Chimpy Chippa actually sees the person watching through the videos, which I thought was really interesting, and reminded me of that movie Sinister. The series also goes through many perspective shifts and unexpected turns, including changing to straight up live action for sections. Really well made and pretty short series, so check it out if it sounds interesting to you and you haven't seen it yet. The Rootside Conspiracy. So this is, I guess, kind of a sequel slash reboot of a series called The Heartwind Archives, which was created by the Mister on YouTube. At least as far as I know. Because the original Heartwind Archives were taken down, but have since been re-uploaded to YouTube. As for the new reboot of the series, it's also about the Heartwind Association. Basically a sort of secret society disguised as a global corporation, who actually partnered with world governments such as America and Canada, as well as even the Illuminati, which was actually co-founded by the founder of the Heartwind Association, Eugene Heartwind, who also happens to be alive during multiple points throughout world history, and is actually a sort of black figure with one eye that can transform into a human. And also, yeah, weird crab guy becomes president. And while I was making this video, I'm pretty sure the last episode of this series just dropped, so yeah. The Scrimblow Catalog. Alright, we got another pretty funny one. So this is another analog horror parody, this time created by Alex Kister, and well, just see for yourself. That's right, this absolute madman took a random tweet and actually made it into a video. And guess what? There's another one. Now I'm just here waiting for part 3. TMK/Kirby.exe. Created by Maple Riot in March of 2022, this relatively new analog horror series focuses on the Kirby video games, specifically Kirby Superstar, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. But the title of this project, TMK, is even more interesting, because this is actually a reference to a goofy Kirby commercial from the 90s, in which kids were brought into a hospital because of a sickness called TMK, or Too Much Kirby, which caused them to, well, look like this. And in the actual series, we can see a being infecting copies of the game Kirby Superstar with a virus, causing all these strange glitches we see in the video. Also, seemingly, it's transmitting this strange illness known as TMK, which is portrayed as a much more dangerous and serious thing in this series. And that old commercial was actually a promotion of the game, but in-universe, it's actually more of a PSA to warn people about TMK. A pretty interesting way of using real-life advertisements for these videos. Channel 7. Yet another series created by Aiden Chick. This time it's his first try at analog horror. And yeah, it was apparently a part of the same universe as his other projects at some point, but he has since said that Channel 7 is no longer canon. Basically, in regards to the story, it's one of those series centered around a TV channel, this time called Channel 7, which seemingly keeps getting hijacked and occasionally shows some unnerving content. And there's a lot of similarities here with Local 58, including a similar video to Contingency, this time called Invasion, where, like the title suggests, America is once again under attack. Corner folk lore. Created by the same guy that made Monument Mythos, we have Corner Folk Lore by Alex Kansas, also known as Mr. Manticore. What is this series about? Well, the first video honestly explains it best.
Many dimensions intersect with their own, several of which are 2D planes. When two or more planes intersect, they form corners. Entities in the intersecting planes cannot perceive each other. They exist separately, in their own worlds. However, the corner folk can pass these boundaries and enter other planes. The corner folk are a trans-dimensional species, They are the only ones who can traverse the corners shaped by planes. Coincidentally, I believe that the corners of my own home align with several planes, for I've seen the corner folk in action, crossing the corners from one reality to another.
So yeah, basically these beings known as corner folk are invading the home of a man named Riley Tillin, and he begins to document his experiences with the beings, as well as delves deeper into the corner folk and corner world. But the next video, titled Corner Girl, makes it even more confusing, as it even kind of breaks the fourth wall here, mentioning the creator himself, Alex Kansas. On top of that, it also appears to be somewhat connected to the Monument Mythos series. CRT Anomalies. Once again, we have another series focusing on strange events showcased through VHS recordings. In the first episode, we see strange security cam footage from a community watch. Then in episode 2, we get to hear the disturbing sounds of a plane crash. But in episode 3, in my opinion, it gets a lot more interesting. And we see a tape based on the MK Ultra program, which of course is something I'm sure you've all heard about. Then there's another one where someone is being chased by something, although we can't see what it actually is. And the last one shows a strange Christian version of Sesame Street. Yeah, I'm not too sure what all this means, although the tapes are labeled with dates, with the uploads being out of order. Crystal View Records. Alright, so this is a bit of a lesser known series created by MacG. Although it does contain only 2 videos, it does have some interesting moments. In the first episode, Fast Food Infomercial, we see just that, an infomercial for fast food located in Bradford Falls, Colorado. We see some stuff on the menu with some strange footage spliced in, and we also get this. In episode 2, we get Science Class Safety, where some other strange messages and other things appear. And I think this series does have potential, although the creator has said it's currently on hiatus. Eventide Media Center. This is Aiden Chick's newest venture into analog horror, Eventide Media Center. And this series showcases tapes from a library located in Eventide Valley, where we can see throughout these tapes that something strange is going on in the area. For example, in the second episode, Ocean View Forecast, we see a weather report detailing a severe and ominous storm warning, where you can notice something about it isn't quite right. And the series from here gets more and more bizarre as you begin to uncover the secrets of Eventide Valley. From the impossible shape architecture to strange one-eyed worm creatures. This series has got some weird but really cool world building. Because of that, this is probably my favorite of all Aiden Chick's projects thus far. Green Mountain Broadcast Center. Created by Pocket Painter, this short 2-episode series is about a video archive center located in Montpelier, Vermont. In the first video, we see a tape found at the home of an unnamed person who went missing in the summer of 1993, who also happened to be a former filmmaker at the broadcast center. This first video is pretty basic and just serves as an introduction to the series, as it tells us that this tape is part of a box set that archives and preserves the history of Vermont. In episode 2, Live Traffic 1994, we get some live traffic reports from the area, and this episode surprisingly is really good. It's actually decently long and gives the viewer enough time to settle into the comfortable vibes of this broadcast before the more subtly unsettling parts begin to happen. I just wish there were more than only 2 videos. Group 864 Training Program. Taking a step back for a minute from the analog horror anthologies, we have another video game. This time Group 864 Training Program, which is a game in which you are being trained as a new recruit for something very similar to the SCP Foundation. And in the game, we see that this tape was meant for those in rank 3, aka death row inmates who are going to be subject to testing, as they investigate strange anomalies and creatures. Again, very similar to the SCP Foundation and D-Class personnel. Basically though, you just go through a series of tests and questions about what rank 3s will have to deal with during time working for Group 864. Michigan, Report from Hell. And here we have another video game, but this one is actually a very old one, released all the way back in 2004. This Japanese survival horror game made for the PS2 was actually never released in North America, and only saw a release outside of Japan in the EU and Australia in 2005. It's among these other analog horror projects because you take the role of a cameraman working for a TV station called Zaka TV. And in the game, you are tasked with investigating a strange mist that is affecting a city, which strangely isn't located in the state of Michigan as you might think. Apparently this actually takes place in Chicago, Illinois, and the game's title is based around the mist phenomena. This game is also notable for having some of the best voice acting ever as well. Take a look.
Poor guy. It's all over for him. God, it's a shame when a coworker dies. No matter who it is. But I guess we'd better be going.
Besides that, the game is also first person and has you looking through the lens of a camera during gameplay. So I guess kind of the OG Outlast. And essentially you have to interact with the environment and investigate with your team before you run out of film. And despite it being jank as hell, I kinda get those so bad it's good vibes from it, honestly. Needle Mouse. Alright, so Needle Mouse is a really interesting case in my opinion, as it's kind of an adaptation of the infamously bad creepypasta Sonic.exe, although this time told through VHS tapes in the form of analog horror. And this series is actually good, despite its source material. Anyway, this series actually showcases VHS recordings of a Sonic the Hedgehog game where something is possessing Sonic, a person who's been trapped in the game for over 30 years after their death. And couple that with some pretty interesting and unsettling screens, as well as some great editing, and you have yourself a much better version of Sonic.exe, if that's even really saying much. Socroft Records. This is another lesser known series, one with only 3 episodes as of making this video. In the first tape, we see a video on plants and how to grow them, and everything is normal until about 5 minutes in, where we see a strange message saying to dig a 7 feet deep hole, sow the seeds of birth, and welcome what's to come. In the next episode, we get another analog TV channel with some missing persons shown, spliced together with some strange footage of a forest, before the broadcast is interrupted by an alert of the area not being safe. And in the last video, we get an instructional school lockdown video, in which we are given even more references to this seemingly alien threat we see in all the videos. And I gotta say, these are pretty well made, especially the last one. And they are also more subtle in terms of horror, but I think that usually can be a good thing. Although it does come off as a tad generic, but that could just be me going through so many similar analog horror series in such a short amount of time. The Smile Tapes. I'm not really sure why this is down here in tier 4 because this one is pretty popular. But anyway, the Smile Tapes, created by Pato Riku in 2021, are a series of analog horror videos that feature an interesting story about a drug called Smile. This drug causes mania, laughter, violent tendencies, and the disturbing smiling which the drug got its name from. And the substance itself is made of spores from an unidentified species of fungus, as described in episode 1. The drug also causes rapid aging and death of those who use it. And not only is this a really interesting idea, and finally not something to do with aliens or Lovecraftian beings, but it's also just a really well-made series with great visuals and overall editing. Check this one out if you haven't already. Winter of '83. So this analog horror series was surprisingly created by Louis Lovehaug, aka Linkara, and all 15 segments of the series were released on the same date, April 1st, 2022. So is it an April Fool's joke? I don't really know, but what I do know is that the series revolves around a town called Fawn Circle in Minnesota, in which during the winter of '83, all the residents of the town vanished. And what follows is an investigation into various recordings and occurrences in order to find out what really happened in the winter of '83. Alright, and that does it for part 2 and the 3rd and 4th tiers of the analog horror iceberg. A lot more of the obscure stuff is starting to come through, although I'm sure big fans of analog horror still knew some of these already. Still, the next and final part is where we'll get to the more underground and obscure stuff, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you all with the next one. Peace.